Welcome. I'm Joel Barna. I'm going to be leading inquiry today, and I want to thank you so much for being here. It's so wonderful to see many friends, many people I've known for a long time, and some new folks I haven't seen before. Welcome to everyone. Let's wait just a couple more minutes for people to come online and see if others want to join. And in about 2 minutes, I will ring a bell and we can sit for about 10 minutes then. And I'll have some remarks and then we will open for real inquiry, I hope. Okay, let me find my bell. Well, let's start a period of sitting together. Let me invite you to feel your feet on the floor. It looks like everybody that I can see is sitting in a chair. So, like me, feel your feet on the floor. Feel your seat on your seat. Feel the air around you, which is part of our whole planet. It's connecting us across all the distances that we have between us right now. Take a deep breath and release it. As you take a deep breath, you might want to see if there is a place where you have pleasure in your body, where you are enjoying whatever sensations you are feeling. And if while we are sitting, your thoughts stray to tasks or to the past or the future, just come back to whatever that feeling of pleasure is that you have in your body. So it's not work, it's pleasure. Please join me in saying the practice principles 3 times together. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Pardon me, I just discovered that I cannot see the Zoom window and try and read from the screen at the same time. So I made a printout, and I'm going to share my thoughts from something I printed out here. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I want to start by noting that sometimes I can follow the advice I read in Bhikkhu Analayo's book, Satipatthana Sutta, A Practitioner's Guide, when he writes, as you are sitting, smile at the propensity of your mind to do what you don't want it to do. Sometimes I can do that, but most of the time I can't. And that's why I want to begin today by picking up on something that Flint shared last week that I found very powerful and very moving when Flint was leading inquiry last week. He talked about a gap that he felt as a teacher between what he hopes to share that's in line with his vow and the gap between that vow and the words that actually come out. And I felt like he was talking about me, as a matter of fact. He said, and this was very moving to me, he said that this causes him real grief that he experiences again and again. He took a side trail early on in introducing his thoughts about this to examine the words vow and avowal, quoting the language of avowal from the repentance chant that we say at Appamada on weekday mornings. All my ancient twisted karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, I now fully avow. We used to say that formulation 3 times, as it is done in other Zen centers, until, at least in the United States. That changed some years ago. Peg Syverson, I understand, noticed that in the source texts that are used for this English translation, there were no personal pronouns. So she took the step of expanding, greatly expanding the chant to go from I to we to all being. I fully avow, we fully avow, all being fully avows. Flint said last week that even in its original formulation, this is very different from confession or repentance in the usual Western sense or in the traditional Christian sense, in which we are confessing individual transgressions against divine law, confessing to the community and maybe to an all-knowing God. Instead, he said, we are simply acknowledging the truth of where we stand. Here we are with all the biological and social inheritances that we bring with us, that we can never let go of, that shape us. And we say, here we are. I am avowing here. With all the darknesses and all the lights and all the majesty and all the aversions, everything all at once. We are avowing that. And then Flint went on to talk more about the gap between his words and his vow, and the feeling that he carries with him, which again, very movingly, he described as grief. I confess I teared up when I heard Flint say that. For all the depth of his practice, how strong his longing must be for sharing the Dharma, and how that longing moves in him. I thought of a quote from Bodhidharma about the precept of right speech, which says something about the difficulty that Flint may have been expressing. Bodhidharma writes about right speech. Self-nature, or he never wrote, I'm sorry. He is quoted in writings as having said at some point, self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the inexplicable Dharma, not preaching a single word is what is called the precept of not lying. So there's a lot more to right speech than not lying. But that just gives an idea that at least in Bodhidharma's eyes, anything you say about the Dharma is a lie. You can't ever really get to the truth. And I think, here we are, as we have avowed, we are social beings who spend a lot of time gauging how other people perceive us. I was recently invited to give a talk at the Awakening Together Sangha in Minneapolis, and I reflected on a lot of these aspects, talking about right speech with that group. And so I'm looking at Marla in my Zoom window here. She's heard a lot of this before, but we spent a lot of time essentially presenting ourselves, acting out a role for other people so that we can maintain social relationships. And that's just kind of the top layer. Under that, there's another layer, which is that words are provided by our culture from a kind of a storehouse of meanings, signifiers, and so on. And we just rummage around in them, in that storehouse, and choose things that may or may not very closely align with what we're trying to convey. And again, I think that's a source of dukkha for us. It's a source of suffering, that all we have is very inexact tools to be able to convey what we want to convey. So what are we to do with given that we are in this situation, what are we to do? I think Flint presented a beautiful example. In the Genjo Koan, which I've been reading with Council 2. I'm not seeing any members of Council 2 present today, but it's a wonderful, Darcy, thank you. I see you raised your hand, thanks. We've been reading this very slowly, a sentence at a time or a paragraph at a time, and going back many times to read the text. But there's a point where Dogen writes, therefore, if there are fish that would swim or birds that would fly, only after investigating the entire ocean or sky, they would find neither path nor place. Which I take as advice to just start where you are. Just, it may be unsatisfactory, but that's really all we can do is start where we are. Otherwise, we'll be like the foolish fish that says, well, I'm not going to move until I investigate the whole ocean somehow. Koshin Paley Ellison, in his relatively new book called Untangled, writes, it is our responsibility to say, yes, I am responsible, and I will do what I can to realize the harmony between intention and impact. That is the noble truth, closing the gap between intention and impact as much as we can. That's our work for at least a lifetime. There's a Jewish saying, I'm quoting Paley Ellison here, there's a Jewish saying that goes, it is not your responsibility to finish the task, but neither can you disregard it. That is good to remember so we don't get so overwhelmed that we throw our hands up in the air. It is within our power to take responsibility for the harm we are causing and to reduce it and to strengthen what good we can do. So I think that applies to our words. I think that applies very strongly. Again, this is what Flint and Peg and our teachers model day after day. Luckily, the Buddha gave instructions for how to talk. He was giving them to his son, Rahula, whom, according to the story, he had abandoned the night Rahula had been born, was the night of the Buddha's leave-taking. Rahula, some years later, joined the order of monks and became a monk, studying with the Buddha. But he was a little kid. He was somewhere between 8 and 12 years old. The timeline varies with the way the story is told. And the way I've read it in one of the descriptions, if asked if the Buddha was in, he had a habit of telling people that the Buddha was out, and of playing, taking enjoyment in lying to people. And the Buddha came to see him and he said, "Don't do that anymore. It's harmful to you." He didn't condemn him. He didn't say, "You have committed a sin," or anything like that. He just said, "You're living as a monk, and whatever benefit you get from living as a monk, if you're lying, you dissipate that." And he gave an example by using a wash basin and tipping it over and saying, "This is what it's like. You're wasting the effort that you're putting in if you're also lying." And he gave his son Rahula the following advice, which has been handed down ever since. He said, "For right speech," and again, this is a lot more workable for me than, as someone who sits in this chair sometimes, it's a lot more workable for me than Bodhidharma's thunderous proclamations. He says, "You can tell for yourself what is right speech. It is spoken at the right time. It is spoken in truth. It is spoken affectionately. It is spoken beneficially. It is spoken with a mind of goodwill." So I want to close my remarks by asking you to look at those pieces of advice. Spoken at the right time, spoken in truth, spoken affectionately, spoken beneficially, spoken with a mind of goodwill. And I would say that half of those are really focused on kind of interior evaluations of speech that's emerging. For example, truth, and whether something is spoken in truth. That's not you have to know if you're telling a lie or if you're doing your best to tell the truth. Is it spoken affectionately? Will you monitor your own feelings about that? And is it spoken with a mind of goodwill, which again seems very much like affectionately to me. But for the other three, it's really more about listening or paying attention to the person who is listening to you than it is about the quality of the speech it's in and of itself. Is it spoken at the right time? You have to know that by engaging with somebody else, right? Is it spoken beneficially? Again, you have to watch the reaction that you're getting. You have to gauge what you're getting back in communication from the other person. This is one of the benefits, I think, of this dukkha-causing situation that we have, that we are big-brained apes who have to depend on each other in constant communication for our survival, that we have an apparatus where we can get from a small inflection of the eyebrow or twitch of the lip or tiny other motions or gestures, whether or not our words are landing in a way that that they are at the right time and they are beneficial. And I would say even that is it spoken in truth is a matter of listening. That it has to do with whether the other person can join you in seeing the truth of what you're saying. So I think that I want to close by just inviting participation in inquiry now. And I want to say that that the rituals of confession go back to the days of the Buddha, and he instituted a ritual that started at the time of the closing of the rainy season practice period, called Paravana. And at the Paravana ceremony, the monks would come forward and they would ask for correction. The word Paravana means inviting correction or inviting reflection on action. Invitation to correction. So on the night of the full moon at the end of the practice period, the monks would come forward one by one and they would describe transgressions that they had made, and either in action or in thought or in attitude. And they would invite others to hear what they had to say, to agree if they agreed, that they saw the truth in what was being offered as an invitation to correction. And they would do it in a mind, from a mind of being beneficial, a mind of being truthful, from a mind of offering it at the right time. These other aspects that have to do with right speech. Now, in our day, we don't talk about our transgressions all that much. What we do is we invite feedback that may have to do with how things went, how something that was said or done landed with another person. This is a very important skill that is emphasized over and over again at Appamada. The ability to listen deeply and to invite for feedback. In modern Asian societies, there's a beautiful extension of the Paravana ritual, which is that at the last night, on the full moon night, people light lanterns. And they're essentially small hot air balloons that float off into the sky. And in many Asian cities, the sky will be lit up with these lanterns, hundreds and hundreds of them floating into the sky all at once. So, with that image in mind, let me invite you to come forward. What lanterns would you send into the sky today in right speech and in an invitation to right listening? And let me just say again, I'm so grateful that we have this institution at Appamada that started with Flint, of inquiry. It allows us a chance to share our thoughts. It allows us to fight against the limitations of language, to swim against the tide of the self-protectiveness that is an inherent part of our nature. And more importantly, it provides us as a group a chance to hold each other in compassion, to hold each other in goodwill, in friendship. Here we are in this majestically uncaring universe with war and famine and illness and aging and death all around us. And we have this opportunity to come together to fully express our humanity. And I think I can think of nothing better than inquiry for that capacity. So again, what lanterns will you share? What ideas will you share with the group? Thank you.
Hi, Joel.
Hi,
I'm so
Bridget.
glad to be with you. And I'm very touched by your reminder of Flint's observations about this aspiration. And so I'm coming forward because um, what's, I think, coming to my mind is my need to listen more deeply to um, my estranged son when he does want to talk. We're now on a basis where we're saying hello to each other, which is actual progress. But I also recently, while at Appamata, noticed that there was a game on the shelf that could be checked out on Satori. And I found it interesting that it was there. So I brought it home and am looking at it. But that's the term that means the Japanese Buddhist term for awakening comprehension and understanding. And so that it sort of meshes with your presentation today or your ideas and your inquiry of how do we understand and see into our own true nature. Um, because this board game, which is for you know 4 to 6 adults, is letting us examine how we let our stories inform us about the way we view the world and react to it. And so I realized that in this challenging relationship with my younger son, that it's the story I'm telling me of not feeling appreciated or being taken for granted or um, so it's very informative to think of monks and spiritual friends coming together to reveal our own nature and um, wanting to turn and have that lantern of thought and acceptance and opportunity to express each other to each other, that we can have that light of seeing better. And then the idea of that's, when you invited us to sit, you wanted us to do it with some sense of pleasure. And so a smile came to my name. So I can imagine those lanterns lifting in the air, and very grateful. Thank you.
Bridget, let me ask a question.
Yes.
And I hope it's not silly, uh, uh, but I was recently talking with another Sangha member who mentioned a book that she said has been very important to her. She's really in her work and in her personal life. She's really focusing on the quality um, of her communication, and she's the one that got because of this. She really got me thinking a lot more deeply about listening, and that showed up in the talk I just gave. But the book that she said that she read a book called How to Talk So That Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So That Kids Will Talk. You're probably familiar with this, but I had never read it until a month ago.
Oh,
And
I actually went to a workshop with the two authors when my
uh-huh,
sons were quite small. They came to Austin shortly after it was published, and I don't know who sponsored their talk, but it was really fantastic because they were both, I guess the authors are both psychotherapists. But what she mentioned after they had given their first, they had an interview on the Today Show, and it meant getting up very early in the morning. So that one of them had told her children, you need to do this, this, and this, because we're going to have to go into Manhattan, then we'll be coming back. And so when she got back home and her teenage son was laying on the couch, and she said, "Did you watch?" And he said, "Why would I do that?" So it's a great book and it's fantastic. I may pull that out again. I think I gave away my copy, but thank you for reminding me of that because
yeah,
that's the key.
I do not offer this in response to what you said.
Yeah,
You've shared about this before, and I
right,
don't want to say. I'm just talking about myself here.
right.
But I will say that what I got, the person who pointed this out was
Okay.
Genevieve Gio, as you may know, and she said that a key for her, which really hit home with me, uh, was that what the author suggested was a key to deep listening was pay attention to the words and then say them back, you know, and say the actual words back. So, um, in my case, thinking of my son, if my son said he was angry about something, to say back to him without judgment and without um, um, wanting an outcome, to say back, so I hear you saying you're really angry about this. Tell me more. Something like that. Now, that, as the authors in the book say, that's really great for a 5-year-old. It's really much more complicated for a teenager or an adult.
Mm.
And so please don't think that I'm offering this except, in response to what you're talking about, except to the extent that for myself, I I want to just acknowledge that I always try and introject myself into the story and say, oh, you're mad about that. Man, for me, I get angry when this happens, something like that.
Mhm.
But what Jeanette pointed out to me was that it's really much more helpful to to leave yourself out for a minute and just say what you're hearing.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm focusing on in the listening part.
Great.
So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you. I see Sheila's hand.
Sheila's hand is up, and here she is. Go ahead. Are you unmuted? You need. There you
Yes,
go.
Sheila's unmuted.
Right.
Looks like it.
Mhm. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I hope I can tell a little story. But this is all so rich that I may be losing it while I'm thinking about all the stuff you've said already and that Flint said, especially his word grief. When I when I feel like I've missed communicating what's synchronous with my vow or what I intended, um, I feel that grief. And that's that dukkha that you're talking about. Oh, a good friend who comes to help me a couple of hours a week. Was I'm talking about a 40-year good friend. Um, I would sometimes raise my voice, and that would she really didn't like that, and I didn't like it either. And lately, I've not been doing that. And anyway, this last time when she was here, um, she's not as familiar with my needs in my room and my requests as my paid helper is, who's here more often. And so she kind of has confusion and inability in a way, or I don't know what all it is I analyze why she can't do some of the things or doesn't do them. And so when I try to tell her where to put something or something like that, I often lately for several weeks have been saying honey, adding honey at the end. And I kind of could feel, like you said, the little twitch or the eyebrow or something. I don't know what it was, but just that she wasn't happy being here and was uncomfortable. And I said, oh, I know what it was. Then she said, after I'd said honey several times with several, what I've tried to be helpful, helping her to help me. um, so that's not altruistic, but anyway, that's the best I can do. I'm not going to judge myself. I'm trying not to judge myself. That's one thing Flint has really taught about healthy shame and healthy guilt and useful. But anyway, so she said something and said, darling. And she's never called me darling. And I said, oh, darling, that's unusual. And she said, well, you said honey several times. And I thought you were I think she said, I thought you were trying not to yell at me or something like that. Or maybe I interpreted that she interpreted that. Anyway, all this communication, we're both psychologists. And so here we are interpreting each other's interpreting, she and I'm talking about. Anyway, so anyway, I searched my heart and I thought I was sincerely saying, honey, and maybe it was partly to dampen my frustration, to not yell with her being unable to help me. And maybe it was partly judgmental because I think she always has a drink before she comes. And that may be something that I don't like. And so, anyway, we ended up, with some hugs before she left and so forth. But her saying darling, that felt kind of sarcastic. And so I felt like, well, she didn't like honey. And so I asked her for feedback. Do you not like me to call you honey? And what would you rather me call you? And she didn't ever come up with just Shirley, just call her name. But that's what I think I'm going to try to do. But I'm going to try to do this listening you're talking about of her body language and how to best be with her. And if I want to help her help me or not, or whether she wants to even help me, or whether we should more listen to her, whether we should just sit and visit and not try to get anything done. I just want to listen better. Mm-hmm. Am I on the right track, or guide me? Inquiry. Guide me any way you see fit.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Sheila. There's something that I left off in the story about the Buddha talking with Rahula, and the Buddha speaking with Rahula begins by saying, pause and reflect on these 5 pause. Stop for a minute and wait and reflect on these 5 qualities before, during, and after your any kind of speech act, anything that you do or say. Take time to reflect on those beforehand and during and after. And I think that you're giving an example of that, that you are I hope I'm not fading out or something. I believe that you are giving an example of that pause. That here your friend has come and you're used to having a course of action set for you both. She's going to help you put stuff away, right? But the communication is more important, as you have reflected. The communication is more important than just the task. Mm-hmm. And your care for her can get lost in pursuing the task. So thank you for talking about that.
Let me respond a little bit, if I may. When you first started this, I thought, well, to not lie, the best thing to do is golden silence. Just keep your mouth shut. For me. And also, that's the pause and taking those few seconds even to be sure I'm as tuned into her or anybody as I can be.
Yeah.
Pause, and that's the silence before
exactly.
I speak is golden.
Exactly. And again, there's that gap between, as Clint said, that can actually cause grief. The gap between our intention and our impact.
Yes.
And when our words get rolling, they can get away from us, So it's the pause is so important.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sheila. I see San Kagami's Zoom window where her pronouns are she, thee, she, they, and Stardust. And I'm reminded that I've got to hear, oh, son, how nice. I'm reminded that I got to hear a presentation by Maria Popova in what was called um, The Universe in Verse in Austin in early April, the night before the solar eclipse passed through central Texas. And she made several statements where normally people in our culture would say, "Thank God we've got this happening," or "Thank Providence," and she always substituted the word stardust whenever God or Providence or goodness or something would show up. So, hi, son.
Hey, how are you? Um,
Good.
it's so funny that you highlighted my pronouns because I was hovering over the button of raising the hand
Ah,
and I wasn't sure if I should come in, and then you brought me in by mentioning me. So that's sweet. I was thinking about uh the the gap between intention and impact. And also I wanted to say I'm just so grateful to see you. I know it's been a long time since I've been, connected, and it just means so much. It's very grounding to be just to see your face. And all its, twitches with my monkey apparatus. Um, so uh on the other end of good intention and impact. So I have had two really big losses in the last 6 months. And I've been subject to, as a grieving person, subject to other people's lack of upaya or skillfulness. And, so they mean well and they want to help me, and the bodhicitta is there, the benevolent longing to support is there. And what you just said is so true, and I'm knowing it from a different side, which is that the grief that we can cause when the gap is so big, it's like when you're tenderized, the signals coming from others that misplace or they don't land, they cause pain. Especially when you're so tender. And so I was just present to how much I've been experiencing that. And I'm fortunate to have such beautiful community of friends who are skillful and who do have capacities and abilities. So it's not been my pervasive experience. My pervasive experience has been beautiful people saying beautiful things in appropriate ways, which is like miraculous in some ways to have that at all. So I'm just thinking about how to meet um, that piece where I'm subject to other people's lack of skillfulness. I'm actually not in my full capacity for responding. They're not soliciting a reflection from me. They're not asking for me to teach or guide them. And so it feels like sort of things landing on you. And I'm still sorting out how to respond or to not respond, depending on the signal in my relationship with the person. And it just feels complicated, feels really complicated, and so fraught with misunderstanding. And I guess I just wanted to name that, name how disorienting it is to be on the other end of people that even mean well and are just hurting you by their inability. You know, it's a strange phenomenon. And I know, and Darcy, I think of you, I think you're here, Darcy. I think of you often because of uh, how much pain we can be in and how much we can be missed when we're in that pain, and how hard it is to know how to be skillful on my end too. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I just have a question, an inquiry. And I'm doing the best I can to not alienate people who are trying to love me, but are
mhm.
actually hurting me when they miss me. Yeah.
I will say, son, I've had some grief in my life, and I know some of the things that you have written about recently,
Hmm.
and it is so hard when
Mhm.
you're being missed, when
Mhm.
when life is just going on, and
Mhm.
and you have this stone in your heart,
Mhm.
that other people can't see, and make worse.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry
Oh.
that, and this is, and what I hear is a bodhisattva turn from you to see the good behind even unskilled
Mhm.
attempts to reach out to you.
Mhm.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for seeing anything I've written. That is very meaningful to me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Karen, hello. Thank you for coming forward.
Hi. Hi, Joel. Um, I just want to really say thank you. Um, I think the times when I'm probably the least skilled and perhaps make the most kind of blunders, if you like, are when I'm with my mum. And that happened recently where I was really impatient, or not even impatient, that's maybe not the right word, but I lacked tolerance about a reaction she had. And I became reactive in response to that. And I always come away, I mean, it didn't kind of continue throughout my time with her, thank goodness. But I knew that that was not my kindest moment. And I know that I wouldn't have reacted the way I did with her. I wouldn't react like that with other people. So there's that whole history, of course, that comes in. But
Mm.
the thing I'm really taking away from today is that pause, which I kind of know. It's just really good to be reminded of it and to think of it in the context of being with my mum. And what you said about, well, what I took away from what you said earlier about that book, which I have read also many years ago. And like Bridget, I think I've probably given it away because my daughter's now an adult. But yeah, of course, there are really useful things that are going to be helpful, whatever age of person you're talking to and whatever relationship. So when something like that happens again, what I'd really like to be able to say to my mum, I'd like to be able to acknowledge her reactivity as opposed to judging her reactivity, just simply acknowledging, wow, you're really feeling strongly about this, or that's really, shocked you or upset you, or something, whatever is appropriate. Um, so yeah, I wanted to just say thank you. Um, and I also just wanted to say to Bridget how deeply glad I am to hear about the reconnection with her son. My daughter was estranged from her dad, my husband, for 2.5 years, and that has recently resolved. So I remember hearing Bridget speak once in inquiry and really felt that pain. So yeah, I wanted to just say that too. Okay,
Thank you, Karen.
thank you.
Again, thanks to Flint, thanks to Appamada, thanks to all the people who are here who have ever participated in inquiry, for creating an institution where we can come forward and share what we have to share in a spirit of goodwill, in a spirit of friendship, met with a spirit of friendship and compassion, and the good kind of gap, the gap between our conditioning and how we can act in this world, that we don't have to always act out of our reactivity, out of our conditioning, that's where our freedom lies. That's where what Paley Ellison describes as the opportunity to take responsibility for our lives and our actions shows up. So thank you again, Karen. So it's time for us to close, and let me see. Ed, do you have the echo that Flint uses, or Maria, would you have, or anyone, would you have the echo that Flint uses for closing? I had it handy and now it's disappeared from my screen.
And
I have it, unless Ed has it. Do you have it, Ed?
no, I don't have my chant book here with me right now.
Okay, well, Flint's
Would you like me
very
to
beautiful version is slightly different from the echo that we normally use. I'm gonna see if I can turn to the right page. So I'm going to read the traditional Appamada echo, and I ask you to join me. We offer the merit of our practice for the welfare of all beings, everywhere. May all be relieved of suffering, free from fear, longing, aversion, and ignorance. And may we, together with all beings, realize the awakened way. Thank you. Thank you, Ed, for being our monitor today.
Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this way. It's been great. And I just want to remind everybody that Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. So your support makes a huge difference. There's a link for contributions on the website if you go there for Appamada or for a teacher. And that's at appamada.org/contribute. And if you'd like to stay with us to continue to meet or have more inquiry, just stay on the line and join us. And when that's done, we'll follow on with inquiry with Maria for an additional 30 minutes. And just pop yourself into gallery view and we will see you momentarily. Mahalo.